Hey there, I'm Ferdinand. I'm a product photographer from Ulm, Germany. And in the second video of this series, I'm going to teach you how to step up your product photography. Whether it's playing cards, puzzles, or anything else you can imagine, I'm going to share some simple tips on how you can improve the photography that you do already. Now in today's video, we're going to cover the topic of lighting and how to light that scene. In the last video, we set up the scene and made sure that our hero, our subject, was really the main point of the image, and that the props surrounding it didn't overpower it. Now in this second part, we're going to cover the lighting aspect of it to draw the attention even more to the subject and away from everything else. I have 5 steps on how you can make that happen. And here they go. First off, you need to choose the mood that you're going for. Second, we're gonna define the angle at which the light is gonna hit our subject. Third, we're gonna choose the modifier that we're gonna use for this photograph to match the mood. The fourth step is bouncing and blocking light. So we get an even lighting across the scene and we get these parts evenly illuminated that we want, and we block out the light from the parts that we don't want. And the fifth step, which is not going to be as relevant today, but it is still a relevant topic, is dealing with reflections. Because when you're dealing with light and reflective surfaces, you're always going to have some amount of reflection in there that you're going to have to deal with somehow. So let's get going. We're going to set up the light, and then I can show you exactly how we can dial it in so it matches and it works perfectly for us. So let's get going. Okay, I set up the light. It's on the stand, it's turned on, as you can see, and now we're gonna start lighting that scene. This is what it currently looks like. We have the puzzle right in the middle. We have this stand right above it where we're gonna mount the camera pointing down on the puzzle. Now, I talked about it in the previous video. I wanna shoot the light in from the diagonal. So the first step is we need to decide what the mood for the shoot is going to be. I want this to be bright and light and airy, so ethereal, so that we get a lot of white, a lot of blown out highlights, not blown out, but very, very high key image. And I don't want a lot of shadows. I don't want a lot of blacks in the image. And so we're gonna need a ton of light to balance this out, basically. What's really tricky at this point is dealing with the shadows. So that's why I chose this to demonstrate how I light a scene, because this is a really difficult scene to light because we need to get light everywhere around the scene, which is a lot harder to do than block out certain aspects of light. The second thing that we're gonna do is decide on the angle. Now, I have already told you what the angle is gonna be, and I will tell you why I chose this angle, but let's just set up the light. We know it's going to be at the top right corner of the image, shining down through the diagonal of the image, so the shadows fall along this diagonal. So let's get that going. Okay, so I have the light set up. It's shooting in from this corner of the table. It's shooting, it's shooting diagonally across the table to this corner, and see all the shadows fall along with that. If we shoot from the top now, that's going to look very pleasing because the shadows fall along the diagonal of the table and of the image, which is why I chose this. I also, as you can see, the light is set up quite high. It's shining down from a, I don't know, let's say 45-degree angle, which is kind of steep. The reason I did this is to get rid of these shadows as much as possible with the single light in place. As you can see, they are very soft, they are very, very small, and not very dark right now. And that is a good thing because I want a lot of light in this scene. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a bounce card, this one right here, to bounce light back into the scene to get rid of more of the shadows. But what I'm gonna do now, before we start with that, is I'm gonna touch on the other points that are really important. As you can see, these shadows are really soft. They don't have a hard edge on them. as you can see here, as you can see here, and even here, the edge is not very hard, as you can see. And that is why I chose this big softbox. This big softbox that has 2 layers of diffusion basically bounces out the light very, very softly, and it spreads around the table very, very softly, which makes it look really, really great. Okay, so that's why I chose this modifier. If I wanted to have harsh edges, I could move the light further back, so the light source would essentially cast harder lines on the shadows, and the closer I move the light to the subjects, the softer the shadow is gonna be. As you can see in the front here, where the light is very near, the shadows are almost non-existent, and the further we move to the front, the harder the shadows get. And this is where the third point comes in. This is where the reflector comes in. We're gonna bounce some light back in so we get rid of these shadows. So as you can see, this is without and this is with the reflector. We can clearly see that we're getting rid of a lot of the shadows, which is really important because if my hands come in here, you can see they cast a really hard shadow underneath them, which is not what we want. So I'm gonna mount the camera up to this arm and we're gonna see what it looks like, and I'm gonna show you exactly how I can modify using the reflector. Okay, so here we are again with this overhead setup. As you can see, the scene looks kind of good. Now, one thing you might notice is that there's a little bit of weird color going on. And that is because the blinds of this room aren't closed. So what I'm gonna do first is eliminate every other light source except the primary light source that I'm gonna use, which is good, which we're gonna need to do to avoid different colors of light being introduced and casting shadows in all the different directions. Because what you can see when I turn off this main light, you can clearly see there's a lot of blue light hitting the subject right now. And if we turn the light back on, you can see this is introducing a little bit of a blue cast into the image. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close the blinds now. And what you'll notice is that the image quality is now a lot better because the color cast is completely gone. If I turn off this light, we have complete darkness. There is nothing in there. If I turn the light back on, we have everything set up. That's very good. That's something that I want to share as a side note, is eliminate all other light sources than your primary light source if possible. So now that we got the mood, the angle, and the modifier basically chosen, we can go ahead and use this little baby. This is the bounce card that I was getting in the basement, basically, the foam core. And what you can see is right now the image looks kind of good, but as you can see here on this side, on the puzzle, on this plant, there's a lot of shadows and I really do not like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this piece of foam core and hold it so it reflects the light back into the scene. And as you can see, if I take this away, you can clearly see there's a bunch of shadows, and as soon as I put this card in, they're basically completely gone. You can still see them, they're here very, very slightly, but this definitely removes a lot of the shadows. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. So this is probably around what our frame is gonna look like, just like that. Yep, there we go. And now what I'm gonna do is, this is without the reflector, this is with the reflector. Obviously I'm gonna set it up outside of the frame so it doesn't show up in the image, but this is without, this is with, and I'm just gonna clamp it to my camera stand so I don't have to hold it manually because that sucks. Okay, and now we basically got the setup ready. This is essentially what we're gonna work with. I can see it's peeking into the frame just a little bit. Gonna fix that. And what you can see is that now if I put my hands in here, I left a little bit of a gap down here so I can put my hands in. And now you can see that the light is really, really looking great. What we could also do is we could use a blackboard to make even stronger shadows, as you can see. This is one of the black spray painted cardboards. And if you put this in, it basically sucks the light out of out of the scene. You can use this to your advantage as well, is if you want to create harsh shadows, because it stops the light from bouncing off surfaces. But I really want to go for the high key look for this image, and so that's why I want to keep this white reflector in here. And the last thing that I want to show you is how to deal with reflections. Because sometimes you have a deck like this, like the Maker's deck. Let's swap out the puzzle for the deck. I know it doesn't look very good. It's kind of a weird thing to do. But let's say that this exactly here was our shot for the deck. What you can notice is if I tilt it towards the light, it picks up the reflection of the light, which is a good thing sometimes. In this case, it looks really good, it brings out the details, but you don't always want that. And for example, sometimes you want to shoot it at a different angle. You want to angle the subject away from the light, but still have the highlights picked up in there. So let me just set that up so I can explain it to you better. Let's say this was our setup for this deck. And as you can see, it's quite dark. You can't really see that this is a reflective surface. Only if I go in with my finger, you can see it picks up a little bit of the reflection. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a white foam core again, angle it so the light bounces directly off. Let me just zoom out. So I'm holding it like this so the light bounces off the surface and back into the scene. I'm setting it up right here and I'm pointing it toward the deck, and as you can see, it picks up and the whole reflection illuminates. I'm tilting it back, I'm tilting it forward. As you can see, this changes the dynamic of how the reflection is picking up the light quite a bit. You can play around with it, you can make the whiteboard pick up more light, you can have it pick up less light, and that's how you can control how much reflection you're gonna want to have in there. Okay, so that's it for this video. Today we talked about how to set up how to decide for the mood of the image, how you can set up the light, deciding the angle at which you want to direct the light into the scene, bouncing it around so you eliminate shadows or you strengthen shadows even, and how you can basically decide how to light up a scene with an artificial light source like I was right there. Choosing a modifier was also in there, and I showed you how I light up a scene basically. Hope this was helpful to you. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll be happy to see you in the next one when we get into editing the photos that I took while creating this video. So that was it. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.